When we think of the American Civil War, our minds usually go to the soldiers, the marching armies, the bloody battlefields, and the famous generals. But far from the front lines, another war was being fought. A war that didn't involve muskets or cannons, but fear, power, and survival. This was the war experienced by civilians. In the southern states, women were left behind as their fathers, husbands, and sons went off to fight. Many believed that, as non-combatants, they would be protected. But as Union armies pushed deeper and deeper into Confederate territory, that belief was shattered. In letters, diaries, and post-war accounts, Southern women described experiences they believed were worse than death. This wasn't always because of physical harm but because of humiliation, a total loss of control, and the destruction of everything they believed defined dignity, safety, and honor. But what really happened, and how much of what we hear today is history and how much is myth? In 1861, Southern society was deeply hierarchical. Gender roles were rigid. White women, especially those from middle and upper-class families, were expected to be protected, modest, and completely removed from public conflict. The Civil War changed all of that overnight. With the men gone, women suddenly became the heads of their households. They were running farms, managing businesses, rationing food, and caring for children and enslaved people. Many lived in a state of constant anxiety, surrounded by rumors of advancing armies. Southern newspapers and politicians warned women that Union soldiers were dangerous invaders who would destroy their homes and dishonor their families. These warnings intensified fear long before Union troops ever arrived. By the time Union forces crossed into Southern towns, many women were already terrified of what occupation might bring. The Union's military strategy evolved as the war dragged on. Early on, Union leaders hoped for reconciliation. But by 1862 and 1863, that strategy had changed. The Union adopted what historians now call hard war. The goal was no longer just to defeat Confederate armies, it was to break the South's ability and will to continue fighting. That meant targeting infrastructure, supplies, and morale. Union soldiers entered towns, occupied homes, seized food, confiscated valuables, and used private property for military needs. Women, often alone, were forced to interact daily with these occupying soldiers. Homes became headquarters. Bedrooms became offices. Parlors became sleeping quarters. For women who were raised to believe their homes were sacred and private spaces, this invasion felt deeply violating even when no physical violence occurred. One of the most emotionally devastating experiences for Southern women was being forced to declare their loyalty. Union commanders frequently required civilians to swear loyalty oaths to the United States. Refusing could mean imprisonment, the loss of property, or even exile. For many women, this oath felt like a betrayal of their husbands fighting for the Confederacy or their sons who had already died in battle. Some women were arrested simply for speaking disrespectfully to Union officers or refusing to cooperate. Others were punished for symbolic acts like wearing Confederate colors, singing Southern songs, or refusing to display the U.S. flag. Public humiliation was sometimes used as a tool of control. Women reported being mocked, threatened, or deliberately embarrassed in front of their neighbors and the soldiers. In a society where your reputation meant everything, this could destroy your social standing permanently. Later writers would describe these moments as worse than death because they stripped women of their dignity in a culture that defined womanhood by honor and respectability. No figure looms larger in these stories than General William Tecumseh Sherman. During his march to the sea in 1864, Sherman's army cut a wide path of destruction through Georgia, destroying railroads, crops, and supplies. Civilians were directly affected on a massive scale. Women wrote of soldiers taking food that was meant for their children, burning their barns, and leaving their families completely destitute. Sherman insisted that his army targeted property, not people, and historical records do support that widespread physical violence against women was rare and was punished when it was discovered. But the emotional trauma was very real. To watch soldiers destroy your means of survival, to be left hungry, exposed, and powerless was devastating. Some women said they would rather die than watch their children starve or their homes be dismantled piece by piece. After the war, Southern memory took on a new purpose. The Confederacy was defeated, but the story of the South was not finished. In the decades that followed, a narrative known as the Lost Cause emerged. It portrayed the Confederacy as noble, honorable, and tragically overpowered. Within this narrative, Southern women were often depicted as pure victims helplessly brutalized by cruel invaders. Some of these stories were based on real hardship, but others were exaggerated, dramatized, or invented entirely. Phrases like worse than death became symbolic, not literal. They express grief, rage, and humiliation, but they also served a political purpose, justifying resentment, reinforcing racial and gender hierarchies, and shaping Southern identity for generations. Modern historians stress the importance of separating documented events from emotional memory and propaganda. Of course, any honest discussion of Southern women during the Civil War must include Black women, whose experiences were profoundly different. For enslaved women, the arrival of Union troops often meant liberation, but it also meant uncertainty and danger. Many fled plantations, sought protection with Union forces, or worked as cooks, nurses, and laborers. Unlike white women, Black women had lived under constant threat long before the war. Their suffering didn't begin with Union occupation, it was embedded in the very system of slavery itself. While white women often described a loss of status, Black women faced the struggle to survive, protect their families, and build new lives in the chaos of war. Their voices were long ignored in post-war narratives, but today, historians recognize them as central to understanding the true cost of the conflict. So, what did Union soldiers force Southern women to do that was worse than death? The answer is not simple. They forced women to confront powerlessness. They forced them to watch their world collapse. They forced them to live under occupation, fear, and humiliation. But history shows that language matters. Worse than death was a metaphor, one shaped by culture, trauma, and memory. It tells us less about literal events and more about how war destroys identity, security, and meaning. The Civil War was not just fought on battlefields. It was fought in homes, in hearts, and in memories. And its echoes still shape how we talk about the past today. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into history interesting, make sure to like and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next video.